back-to-back rock block of lightning talks. We're going to start with Dan Stevens.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan Stevens, and last year I got up here and did an impromptu talk on Write, Measure, Repeat, and I was talking about some of the things we hoped to do at Atlassian to change the way we think about documentation and information solutions. And so today I'm coming back to give you an update on Write, Measure, Repeat in Atlassian, but I want to add something to that, and that's listen and observe. Because if we just write, measure, and repeat using only the data, we're missing a big human factor, which is listening to our customers, to our users, to our communities, and observing how they use our products, how they use other people's products, how they interact with the community. So first, let's talk about measurements. And yes, measurements has boredom, but measurements, there are so many different ways. Essentially what we've done is, to solve the problem, I want to talk about the solutions that we've come up with for measurements. Yay, solutions. So Google Analytics, essentially just the page clicks, but what we've done is we've started to take just the page clicks and then turn that into the same thing that marketing uses, which are conversion funnels. So we take tutorials and we put them into a Google Analytics conversion funnel, and then we can watch our customers and our users come through that funnel, and we can see where do they come in, where do they leave, how many different people start out on a journey, and how many people get all the way through to what we think the end point of that journey would be. And that gives us great insight into what do users care the most about. And so with Bitbucket, one of the things that we have the biggest challenge to teach new users is how to learn Git. And so our 101 tutorial is really less about using our product and more about using Git. And we know from the data that more users come in and they go through the first 3 stages. They get to the point where they've got that repository on their local system and they've pushed up a file, and then we have about a 50% drop off. But we've managed to maintain thousands of people through that funnel every month, and we watch them go through. And then the other thing that we've been doing recently is really taking a lesson from the growth industry, right? We've been doing A/B experiments between using our in-house events and our in-house database to measure how can we influence user behavior. So we came up with a feature discovery experiment where the information experience team designed the information experience on how to get more people to use pull requests. And so we worked with our growth team to put events all throughout the UI and then all throughout the different spaces where we added in-app help and guiding text and feature discovery text. And we could watch those users move through that process, and then we could watch how we influence their behavior over the long term. How many more people as a percentage created pull requests? And we've done well with this in some things. The pull request thing worked out really well. We got a statistically significant increase in the number of people who used pull requests. And we've had not so good results with other aspects that we tried to influence their behavior in app. And then we also take these events and we watch, where do people exit the application, and what are they doing at that time that they exit the application for things like SSH keys, where we have a huge number of people who come to our docs to learn about SSH keys. And so we've started to tweak, how can we influence that in the application? How can we don't want to not have great documentation that's easy to use, but we want to solve that problem as close as possible. So we've been doing A/B experiments with that, and we've had some good results and some less so. But now I want to talk about observation, because getting the data of the people you already have is only half the battle. And so there are so many opportunities that we have to observe. Formal usability tests, on-site customer visits, and then the data itself, right? But one of the things that I really emphasize when I talk about observation is learning from the healthcare career that I had for 13 years before I moved to tech writing, and that is to observe with empathy. To not just observe, is the user passing the user test, but to look for, are they nervous, are they unsettled, like look for emotional cues, look for human cues. Design listening time into your user tests and you will get great results. And then listen at hackathons and conferences and listen to people who are in the community that uses your product, whether it's source controller or wikis or whatever. Like listen to what they like and don't like about the products in that community. So observation is more than just tests and data. You want to observe all the things. determine what your problem is, use observation to determine what your problem is, solve that problem, measure the solution, share your findings, and then repeat. And that's why I love Write the Docs, because I learn all these kinds of things and I get to share them back with you, because who's awesome? You're awesome.
All right, thanks, Dan. Up next, we have Stephen Barlow, who's going to talk to us about voiceover for videos.
Hello, I am Stephen Barlow. I am a technical writer at Square. On the side, I am a represented voice actor at Stars the Agency in San Francisco. I've been with them since 2012, and I've done voiceover projects for clients such as Burt's Bees, T-Mobile, and Cisco. So I thought I'd spend a couple of minutes to talk to you about how to get a great voiceover performance from yourself for a demo or instructional video. So it often falls on us as content creators to create every aspect of the media that we make. So instructional videos include both video and voiceover. And so it's often on us to make those if it's just a quick little tutorial. Of course, as we've already discussed a couple times at this conference, video is not a perfect tool for a lot of situations. But if you do find yourself in a situation where you do want to create a video, these tips should help. So, you've written your script, you're about to get behind the mic, you need to ask yourself 3 questions before you start. The first question is, who are you? The second question is, who are you talking to? And the third question is, why are you saying what you're saying? So let's go over each of these questions. The first one, who are you? For the purposes of the demo video, you are whoever built the tool that you are explaining. You are an owner of this thing, okay? You are proud of the work you have done, not in an obnoxious way, in a happy way, and you're enthusiastic about the project. You think that what you built is cool or helpful or easy to use, or whatever the value add is of the product, and you want to share it with other people. So, let's say this is a line from my script, and I'm just going to read it as if I'm reading it straight off the paper. The Square Connect API lets you download your payment history and manage your item library. Okay, now if I were watching that video, I would know what the video is about, but I probably wouldn't care. But if I were to pretend to be an owner of this object, of this API, and really own it and be happy and excited to share it with you, it might sound something like, the Square Connect API lets you download your payment history and manage your item library. Now, you, as a listener, are suddenly going, oh, okay. And that's all you want. You just want the listener to go, oh. And then suddenly they're going to listen to the rest of your presentation. You're just going to get the, huh. Now, that's who you are. Who are you talking to? So, imagine the target audience of your video. So you basically know who your audience is. Now picture somebody in your own life who best maps to that person, okay? And visualize yourself talking to them. It has a nice familiar ring to everything you end up saying afterwards. Speak directly to that one person. Use your normal conversational speaking voice and volume. You're at a coffee shop, there's not really anything in the background, you're just having a nice pleasant conversation. And imagine, okay, as you're going through the lines of your script, what the other person is saying after you say each of those lines. So even though this is a monologue in which you're explaining how your product works, imagine the other person's going, oh, neat, and like, oh, I never thought about that. And that guide how you say the next line. So for example, my first line again was, the Square Connect API lets you download your payment history and manage your item library. And then my friend goes, oh, neat. And so now I'm going to raise the bar. Approved merchants can also use it to manage their employees and time cards. So I see that I've gotten their interest and I'm raising the bar, and so now I've really got their interest and I can begin to go into the details because they're hooked. Great. Okay, that's who I'm talking to. I now know who I am, and I now know who I'm talking to. Third, why am I saying the things that I'm saying? So, go through your script and visualize what each line of your script is describing in the video, okay? Like see it in your head, and why that's interesting or compelling for the listener. So, adjust your read to reflect what makes that feature special to the product and why the person cares about it. So, for example, are you describing in your video that some common task is annoying for developers to perform all the time? Sound like you empathize with it and understand that that's an annoying thing to do, like, deploying a web application has always been a surprisingly daunting task, right? All right, suddenly you know that I think it's a shitty thing to do, right? Deploying a web application, it's hard. Maybe something is easy though, right? Sound like it's easy to do. The deploy to Heroku button lets you deploy a web app with a single click. So now, oh, that sounds great. What if I take those two sentences and have those two reads juxtaposed right next to each other? Suddenly the value out of the deploy to Heroku button is very clear. Deploying a web application has always been a surprisingly daunting task. The deploy to Heroku button lets you deploy a web app with a single click. Suddenly, with 2 sentences, I know exactly why the deploy to Roku button rules. Great. So, let's review those 3 questions one more time. You gotta know who you are, you're the expert, you know why your product is cool, you're sharing it with another person. 2, who are you talking to? Find a person in your own life who represents your audience. And 3, why are you saying what you're saying? Analyze your script for the big callouts that you want to make, and find ways to juxtapose and create contrast in your read to keep the listener engaged. And finally, one last tip, your voice does not sound nearly as bad as you think it does. It sounds different because it's not in your head. Okay, thank you, goodbye.
All right. Thanks, Stephen. Up next we have Becky talking to us about taxonomy and ontology and other erudite things.
Taxonomy, ontology, let's call the whole thing off. So, my name is Becky Yost. I am a librarian and I am proud of it. So, first, write the docs for me. You all are great. So, here's my first question for you. How many of you have heard the term taxonomy? How many of you have heard the term ontology? How many of you have your higher administration or coworkers say, hey, you know, our docs are not findable. Let's create an ontology, or let's create a taxonomy. Actually, let's create a taxonomy and ontology and whatever we can. Okay, so what I've noticed within librarianship and actually with, in other fields is that taxonomy and ontology tend to be used interchangeably, but the two are different enough that you might want to be careful as to saying, oh, we need an ontology. In fact, that you might need a taxonomy and vice versa. So we're going to go over a couple definitions. So taxonomies. So your traditional taxonomy is something that you would see similar to biology. It's basically a more common, often than not, a hierarchical tree classification system. So what we have right here is a taxonomy on pies. Taxonomies tend to be very limited in the way that they show relationships. So we have 3 relationships, and these are the basic 3 relationships that you can show in taxonomies. Pies are related to tarts. A broader term for a pie is a pastry. So pies are part of the pastry family. And a narrower term is a type of pie. So, for example, rhubarb pie. And if you're dealing with controlled vocabularies, those are more often than not taxonomies. And taxonomies tend to be mostly linear. So as we go broader, narrower, you can move the scope up and down. But if you want to show relationships, you're limited in what you can do in taxonomies. So this is when you go into ontologies. If taxonomies are just the tree, ontologies are the forest. And they focus on the relationships between the entities or real-world objects. So what we have here with pies, a pie is a pastry, so we have that relationship. It's part of a meal. It could be the entire meal. It could be just a part of a meal. It contains awesomeness. So you branch out on what awesomeness is in other relationships. I have eaten the pie. I am also an entity, so there's other relationships there. And as you see down there in the bottom, ontologies can contain taxonomies. So you can embed controlled vocabulary in an ontology. And what you usually do for ontologies is a mixture of relationships and taxonomies. Now, when you're looking to making your docs more searchable and findable, you might feel the need to create yet another standard or yet another vocabulary. I want you to stop before you start reinventing the wheel, because there are things out there that already exist. Some of them are free, some of them you do have to pay for. If you're doing taxonomies, a great way to cover both bases is both controlled vocabularies and also using user-supplied keywords. So there's been some talk about here mining your search, failed searches, Google Analytics, Heidi Waterhouse in 2013 talked a little bit about creating searchable docs. And me being the librarian, I have some resources for you. The first one is a not a complete list, but a list of ontology languages. So if you want to go towards semantic web type stuff, that would be a good place to start. And then Heidi's talk in 2013, taxonomy, there is a book called Accidental Taxonomist. I highly recommend it. It gives you a lot of information. There's also a blog. And don't be afraid to stop by your library and say hi and make friends with your friendly neighborhood metadata and cataloging librarian. Hi. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Becky. Up next, we have Kenzie Woodbridge.
Theoretically, this should work. Hello, my name is Kenzie Woodbridge. I work at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. If you work in post-secondary, please come and talk to me on a break. I would love to hear from you. So, my talk is called Keep the Baby, a plea for not starting over. Then once I wrote that down and committed to it, I realized that meant I would have to make some complicated metaphor about babies, so it'll be very not in it, actually, because it's too complicated. But anyway, going to tell you a quick case study of the BCIT knowledge base. So it contains technical information for our many, many students and close to 80,000 students and 2,700 faculty and staff. Stuff anywhere from how to log into Wi-Fi to how to use apps anywhere, how to use the proprietary software that is totally wacky and difficult to use. It is my adopted baby. So I was not the original creator of the knowledge base in 2004. Sorry, just a moment. Instead, I was one of many content owners in the early days, and I did my little bit to keep my own content up to date and reviewed. The original creator actually left in 2008. It was maintained really well until then, and someone else took over who wasn't very good at it. And it was benignly neglected until 2011. They did their best, but they just had no real sense of how to keep on top of everything. In 2011, they finally retired, and as I was the only articles that were being reviewed and updated were mine, I was the obvious next owner of the knowledge base, so they gave it to me. And then I was very excited, and I went to the managers and was like, I've got all these really great ideas as to how we can make this better. We should do all of these exciting things. And they said, don't be crazy, just keep it running. We don't have a budget, we don't have time, we can't do it. It all has to wait on all these projects, and on and on and on. So that began the start of the aggressive maligning. And the tricky part was, I would end up going to meetings and people would say, knowledge base? I mean, are we still using that? I thought we were decommissioning that. Surely there's a project to do a new thing. Well, there's never going to be a project to do a new thing if there's not even, a budget to just get a new search engine for it. So, but the problem with that idea that there was going to be a project in the future to update it was that people could say, well, we don't have to do anything with it right now because there's that project that's going to happen in the future to make it new. We're going to nuke the site from orbit. Yeah, but no one was going to do that either. So as you can see, this is our traffic numbers. This is just for the month of September because that's the big month if you're in post-secondary. You can see that traffic was declining, but you can also see that the value that people were getting once they were there, it's sort of constant across there. People were finding some information they needed, they were reading it and using it pretty constantly. It's just the absolute numbers were going down. So by 2014, I actually managed to collect the right people to help me do a project to update it. We did all of these exciting things. It actually only took 3 people at 20% of the time for about 3 months, maybe even less than 20% in some cases. but we managed to make it look really new while using that same content. And what happened next? Well, we made a huge difference. So certainly we regained all the ground we'd lost on the number of people who were going there, but the people who were going there suddenly found it much more useful, and they had much more trust in the content that was there. And this had the side effect of people going, oh, I guess I do need to review my content and make sure it's up to date because people are using it. It is a resource that we are using. So these are my exciting graphs that I really like to show just how much of a change that was. But yeah, that's my plea for not going with the idea that, oh, I guess we should just start a new thing because this thing is sort of awkward and clunky. Really, you can make a huge impact with much less time and resource and make a big difference with just the stuff you have and, you know, giving it a lick of paint. Thank you.
All right, Kenzie, thank you very much. Up next, we have Matt Werner, who's going to talk to us about 20-minute meetings.
Hi there, my name is Matt Werner, and I was addicted to meetings. Who here, let me see a show of hands, who here thinks they go to too many meetings or meetings take up way too much of your time during the work week? Wow, so there's quite a few people here who are in a similar boat as I once was. So I'm going to be talking about 20-minute meetings, how to win engineers and influence product managers. So I work as a technical writer at Google. And, a second.
It's showing some other screen.
Okay, here, give me a second to let this go. There. I'll move it over. Let me hit view, present. Oh, I'll run through it like. Great.
Actually, oh, that's tough. Okay. I'm not seeing it. Is it here somewhere?
Yeah, top one.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so here's my team. We document Android and Chrome for businesses and schools. We write a lot of public-facing help center documents, and as you could imagine, in the Android space, there's a lot of meetings to attend. So here's a little Dilbert cartoon I like. We have to learn to do more with less. Less meetings? No, we'll need more meetings to figure out how to do more with less. So this reminds me, before I joined Google, I was working in the nonprofit space, and one of the things that I really didn't like was we would have meetings about meetings. We'd have these 2-hour, 3-hour things, sort of free-form, sort of open discussions, and I felt when we came out of them, there weren't really good, clear, concrete action items that each of us could do. And so kind of the problem statement, most of us know it, but there's been research, CEOs spend nearly a day each week managing communications and 2 days per week in meetings. And for tech writers, I've found this can be similar. And for me, I was documenting several products and meetings were just taking over my week. So one solution is to say no to all meetings. Just hit, you know, almost like out of office reply, do not contact me. So that's one tactic to take, but your coworkers may not be too happy. And then the alternate solution, and this may be somewhat familiar to you guys, but I came up with a method for the 20-minute meeting. So step one, do you really need to meet at all, or could it be done by email? This is kind of a very gentle way of doing the no statement. Step two is schedule only the time you need and use only the time you've scheduled. And so I found 20 minutes is sort of the perfect amount of time. And my approach is that I let the engineers or the product managers know, hey, your time is very valuable. I'm only going to meet the subject matter expert that I need to talk to for only the specific amount of time that we need to talk for. to deliver on this product. Because with these rolling launches, there's just so many features coming out, so many different product areas, new apps coming out, lollipop releases, all this stuff happening in Android. And there's a lot of churn where the product I'm documenting on Monday could completely change by Friday. And so I know that the engineers are very busy, I'm not going to waste their time. And so that's sort of the tactic I've taken. So moving on to step 3 is providing an agenda. The agenda can be very brief, just basically owner, type, and purpose. So owner, who is the owner of the meeting? Who's the decision maker here? What type of meeting? Is it a check-in? Am I going to be kind of grilling you for 20 minutes about what the product specs and requirements are? And then also, what's the goal and the outcome? And so with this, moving on to step 4, is to be highly selective with the invites, where only the people who need to be there are going to be there. And they say once you reach about more than 8 people, the meeting is just getting too big. And I usually keep it where I have just 1 or 2 of the subject matter experts, and it's almost like rapid fire, like investigative reporter style, just like, hey, this is going out in a matter of days, we need to document it. Okay. Okay, thank you guys.
All right, Matt, thank you. Up next we have Ian from Rackspace with a mercifully slide-free talk.
Hey everybody, my name is Ian White. I'm a Senior Manager of Technical Publications at Rackspace. And I want to talk to you a little about how to pivot big. Yesterday, Zach Corlison, my colleague, talked about pivoting big. Today I want to talk about the process behind how we've done that, but also some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. This will be mainly from a management perspective. So if I think about one thing was our vision. Our vision within developer experience was to give developers all the tools they need within one place. So tools, SDKs, and great documentation that they use to build applications on our cloud. Of course, that introduces some challenges, right? So some of the barriers we run into early on was that our documentation portals had kind of grown over the time and siloed on different portals. So they were across at least 8 or 10 different domains. Another big problem that we ran into is that it wasn't easy to use. Some of our content was hard to understand or difficult to use, and our toolchain was really difficult to contribute to, which was a massive problem for our developers. And then the last thing was that our content really wasn't optimized for the web, which was huge, right? We wanted to make sure that it was easy to find and discover. And so we launched a project called Nexus, an internal project name, and the goal of the project was really to empower our user base and our contributors to make it much easier to contribute in any language that you prefer, whether that be restructured text or Markdown or whatever you wanted to do. We also wanted to make it far easier to make sure that you could be comfortable with the technology stack. So for developers, that meant using GitHub to power our repositories. And so as we started to launch this project, we came across a few things that worked pretty well, so I want to share some of those experiences with you now. One thing that was important is that early on we needed to share. Being very open and transparent about what your challenges are, but also what your successes have been, was really key. The way we did that was that we had a conference, an internal conference about a year ago called Rock the Docs. That brought together for the first time information developers, writers, as well as developers and anybody that was really passionate about documentation all in one place. And as we started to talk through these pain points, we started to identify those themes. So the second takeaway was that we started to unite around those simple themes. The problems that were simple but impactful to our customers, and we started to understand that these themes could actually be a powerful change if we made progress against them. And so as we got these themes and these pain points, we realized that we had the opportunity to do something about it. So we started to plan. We spent about 3 months kind of talking about what we're going to do, and then we moved immediately to rapid prototyping. Let's build what we want to talk about. So this meant that we had to migrate from a content perspective or refactor some of the content to from DocBook to restructured text. For our user experience teams, it meant that they had to start to work on interviewing customers and figuring out the way that they wanted, our customers wanted the information to be presented to them. And for our engineers and our developers, it meant that they needed to actually build this content engine. So they rapidly started to build prototypes and executed on what they wanted to work on. And so the fourth thing that we learned and take away is that we really needed to make sure that everyone could work on these things in a non-interrupt driven way. So we separated out the concerns. The content teams, the user experience teams, and developer teams could all work on the assets they wanted to, but we need to just share and be open about what our key outcomes were going to be. but that did not impact our ability to work together because we had those concerns separated. So it was something that was really key for us. What was the result? Well, the outcome is that in less than a year and by the end of the summer, we'll be deploying our new content engine onto the web that will allow us to publish in minutes as opposed to hours or days. Secondly, it means that we will have a unified customer experience for all of our documentation for the first time. And lastly, it means that we can enable content contributors to contribute at any level of skill and ease of use from both support guys all the way to developers and our technical writers. You can watch us work or give us feedback at developer.rackspace.com. We'd love to see what you see about it. And you can contact me on Twitter at Ian the White. Thank you.
So, hi. Another talk without slides. So I'm Niels. I'm from Stuttgart, Germany. So forgive my accent. I'm happy to be here, and I want to talk about wiki-based documentation. So we've heard about the father of the wikis from Rod Cunningham about wikis earlier this morning, and we've had an awesome talk from Christine Burwinkle yesterday about Confluence. So I'm pretty sure every one of you now knows about Confluence. But who knew about Confluence before he came to write the docs? Oh, awesome. And who's using Confluence for writing documentation? Cool. You like it? Okay. I work for K15T Software. We're the developers of the scroll add-ons, and so if you're doing technical documentation with Confluence, you might have heard about us from us. So yeah, we believe that wiki-based documentation is a great way to work. So I thought about like giving a short demo, but then I read the guidance on the Write the Docs website that you rather don't do live demos because everything will go wrong. So that's why I don't have slides. I'm standing here a little bit. But I want to announce that we'll be at Lola's room at 2:30, giving a tool presentation or showing the solutions we've developed for Confluence. And if you are interested, just come down to Lola's room, and we'll be happy to speak about your use cases and your pain points using our scroll add-ons. And yeah, thanks.
Hi, my name is Jen Stoy, and I work for a company called the Advisory Board Company. And actually, it's a little bit different than most of the companies we've heard up here. It started as a kind of a consulting firm in 1979, and now it's this 2,800 person behemoth that does healthcare consulting, best practices, research and insight, and then a whole bunch of technology products. And I'm the only technical writer there. So I don't do all of the products. I only do one vertical, but that's 20% of the revenue. It's like, oh, you're responsible for documenting $100 million worth of product, go to it. So my talk today is about how to take practices that you hear at a conference like this, where a lot of people get to do very progressive, cutting-edge things, and take it back to companies that are huge, that have layers on layers of their own culture and words and all of that stuff, and help your users. And I had this whole 5-point talk where it's like, here's this and this and this point about how I'm going to take all of this learning and take it back to the advisory board. But as I was looking over it again and again, I realized the main point that I got out of all of this was one main point, which is having empathy for the users that you have, not the ones you wish you had, the ones that you have, and adapting from there. So my main users are actually internal users. They're kind of like support, but they're also like mini consultants for the hospitals that we work with. Their names are dedicated advisors, that's the role name. So you know, most of the end users are 50-something hospital administrators, executives, and physicians. They pay our company a lot of money to not read documents. You know, they're not interested in reading this. They just want something that's pretty, that shows them, you know, how much money am I saving with you, because healthcare is in a big saving crisis. And so we've got these late 20-something people who are there to be their experts, to say, hey, with our new procedure cost manager, we're going to save you, you know, everybody in the user base $50 million this year on hospital case costs. So my job is to make sure that I get those people on the Epic Quest so that they can get my end users on the Epic Quest. So I have to think about my users not just at one level where it's like, I'm trying to get my end users to this point where they're like, oh, I found in my lap appendectomies, you know, a savings of $100,000 on the procedure. I have to get a group of people to say, okay, I can take this to anywhere from Mass General Hospital to the little community hospital up the street. And so I have to think of it on two levels, and I have to have empathy for my users on two levels as well. So a lot of what I'm getting from this is, if you focus on your user, and I took this from Riona's talk, if you focus on what the user's workflow is rather than what you wish it was, you're going to get a lot farther. And this has actually been true in my own work, especially in knowledge management things. It's like people don't have the cognitive time to do new things. And I think I'm coming up on 5 minutes. So, you know, have empathy for your users, whatever level you're at. And if anybody here is also interested in how to do well on Jeopardy, you can talk to me because I was on 2 weeks ago. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, my name is Lee Welsh. I'm a technical writer from Vancouver, BC. I work at Hootsuite. And everyone that's come up here on the stage has told really cool stories about all the awesome things they're doing. I thought I would actually flip that and humiliate myself in front of you all. So this is a presentation I gave at work a few weeks ago, and I'm one of very, very few technical writers there, and I'm one of the only, actually I am the only engineer technical writer in the company, and I wanted to explain to people exactly how I became a technical writer and why I feel what I do is one of the most important jobs out there. And so this is going to be a condensed version of the presentation that I gave. Basically, I told a story, I'll skip through these slides, of what basically cemented in my mind that what I do with words really has more import than I had been giving it at the time. So, backstory, in high school, I was the editor of our high school newspaper, thought I was super hot shit, look at me, I'm editing this newspaper. And so I would take other people's articles and I would edit them. You know, I'd add punctuation for effect and I'd correct their spelling, and I take out all the internet chat speak, and I really wanted to leave my impact on this thing. And one of my big things was having impactful sentences that would really leave, you know, make the user feel something, make them feel empathy, or make them angry, or make them happy. Just as long as you could get that message across and do it using in such a style that they would actually get something out of that. So I was editing someone's article, and the subject of the article was teen suicide. And I took the article and I'm like, all right, this is a good article, but I can make it better. I'm going to use punctuation and edit some things and turn it into this amazing thing. That's where this slide comes up. It didn't happen quite as I'd planned. So I don't know if you can read this out there, but the first line is what the actual line was. It may seem like suicide is the only answer. Our advice is don't, comma, ask for help. Okay, that's good. It doesn't have that impact. I wanted to really leave, you know, people feeling something. So I thought I would change it to, it may seem like suicide is the only answer. Our advice is don't ask for help. In my haste to get this thing out and published to the outside world, it actually went out to my entire high school as, it may seem like suicide is the only answer. Our advice is don't ask for help. So that was my first experience in having a really, really humiliating editing snafu. And basically from there, what happened is we actually had to recall every single issue of the newspaper, take a Sharpie, cross out the word don't, hand them all out to everybody else in the school, and then have like a 45-minute PA presentation from the principal about why we shouldn't commit suicide. So the whole point that I gave this presentation at work was to really emphasize that punctuation is important. I'm not just sitting there making things pretty, I'm actually contributing in a really positive, hopefully not like this way. And that everyone should love their technical writers because we all do really hard work and we all love what we do, and that's really rare in anything actually. So I just wanted to share my story with you, and don't do like I do. The end.
Right. Unfortunately, that's it for the lightning talks today. For those who are not able to talk,